What is going on, everybody? It is Monday, April 25th. It is NFL Draft Week. We had an NFL Draft Unreasonable Odds podcast for you last week. We are coming back with another one for you this week to hopefully keep you prepared for the occasion. And things have moved quite a bit since we did that last draft podcast, which was only recorded, 4 days ago, which shows you how this process works. But as we sit down on April 25th, we're now 3 days from the first day of the NFL draft, and we, of course, come back with yet another guest. John Daigle. You can find him on Twitter at not J Daigle. You threw one of those curveballs out there on Twitter. You can find him NFL Fantasy and Handicapping at 4for4 Football and at BetSpurts. And I mean, I'm just looking at your Twitter profile. It says you have an Emmy. That's pretty cool, John.
As someone who, once he retires, if he retires, wants to go into the forest and just chop wood forever and get away from all of this, trying to be anonymous and not J Daigle in the title whenever I first discovered Twitter in 2011, not the best idea for my career. It may take a little longer to run into the woods now because of that Twitter handle alone.
All right. Well, it says something, the handle that you wanted was taken. So you settled for something else.
I settled for the anonymous route.
Yes.
Not the best suggestion. I would not advise anyone else do that, but it's working for me so far. So yes, everything's going well. As you mentioned, the draft is very crazy. We know in the next 3 days, numbers are going to move all over the place. What we discuss right now may get washed out by the time someone sees this, even a couple hours later. So we'll see what we can get down. I'm confident in a few picks, though. So excited to see where we take this conversation.
Our producer Samir just slacked me while you were speaking, saying that he has an Emmy too. So I guess they just give these things out to anybody. So I'm no longer as impressed. I'm no longer as impressed with the accomplishment.
I got mine. Curious where Samir got his. I got mine because I was on the team working for the Women's World Cup in Paris. I lived there 2 months working with Fox Sports, and I got it for highlights. That's where I get my Emmy. But as with everything, even my college degree, which doesn't matter at all, I don't keep anything for myself. I'm not a physical items person. There's a history where some people know if they're listening to this from my career where I was a nomad. I lived on the road for a full year from my car and hotels. And so all of these possessions and that should be considered rewards. They are just to me. So I just hand off to my parents and they put it on their fireplace and mantle and they say, oh, we're proud of our son, where I'm the one that just is lost writing crazy Jack Kerouac notes in my journals. That's what I do. So yes, I do have an Emmy, but it is a cool accomplishment, but I actually don't keep it on me at all.
Interesting. All right. And for the record, producer Samir, congratulations. His is a regional Emmy for a digital series that he did at a TV station in Pittsburgh.
That actually takes a lot more creativity than what I did. So good on you, Samir.
All right. Now let's get creative with some NFL draft props. I'm the only Emmy-less person working on the podcast today, so I'll have to figure out a way to earn mine later. Okay. So when we recorded on Thursday, we had Will Brinson and Connor Allen here, and we started at the top of the draft and kind of worked our way down, which meant starting with over under on Aiden Hutchinson and betting on the number one pick. And at the time we gave out on the podcast, and I know people have this at better numbers, but we gave out on the podcast Hutchinson over 1.5 at plus 160 and Trayvon Walker to go number one at plus 190. That's what they were sitting at on Thursday afternoon, April 20th, I guess it was, on DraftKings Sportsbook. That kind of goes through the weekend, and we wake up on Monday morning as we record this now, and some pretty legitimate movement. You want to look at this now on DraftKings Sportsbook. Trayvon Walker is minus 160 to go number one. Aiden Hutchinson is plus 140. Steep drop off to Icky, the offensive lineman from NC State. He's now at plus 750. He's been all over the place. This now gives us the 4 people have been favored to be the number one pick in this draft, which is just, coming off of years where the price on Trevor Lawrence just keeps moving until it's obvious and unbettable. Price on Joe Burrow just keeps moving until it's obvious and unbettable. This is a completely different draft. So, John, I'll just hand it to you. Do you have a stance? Do you have any tickets on the number one pick? Do you agree with the movement? And what do you think about just how open this draft is at the top?
I hope I agree with the movement, since I got one last big bet on DraftKings Sunday night I've been betting Trayvon Walker since he was plus 250 for the past 2 months because it's been very clear in my mind that everything else doesn't make sense. You have to remember, you're not thinking of your own analysis of a player. It doesn't matter what I think at all about Trayvon Walker's production or lack thereof in college. Exactly. Vice versa for Aiden Hutchinson. What we are looking at is the decision makers and who is in on who. And we know for a fact Doug Peterson, an offensive-minded individual, has been on Ika Mkwandu this entire time. We know that Trent Baalke has been on Trayvon Walker, and we know everyone who doesn't matter in the organization is in on Aiden Hutchinson. Thus, Hutchinson has not been in my process whatsoever. And now it finally came full steam ahead, 3 days ahead of night one with Trayvon Walker, as you mentioned, minus 160. It'll probably go even higher from there. And so I'm done betting it now. But if you do have some, other spots or with friends who do not think otherwise that Trayvon Walker will not be the number one pick, I support still betting him because, yes, he has always been the number one pick in my mind.
Wow. So you've really been on this.
Yes.
And, I have some Ekwonu, and I did get in on Walker at, what do I have? Plus 200 and plus 300 are the numbers that I have there. So, that's there. I guess what I would say is, so to help the people out that listen to this, and if you get it on Monday, April 25th, it sounds like you're pretty set on this, and you think this is one that's going to kind of just fly up the board until it's official the rest of the week. So if you're not in and you're getting in late, like a lot of casual bettors are, and you don't mind laying a minus 160, it seems like you still think that's a good spot. Not that you personally would get invested in it because you're ahead of the curve here, but for casual bettors looking to get involved.
Yes. And for the casual bettor looking to get involved, like, even they're probably not laying minus 160 either, right? Like, betting draft props is a dumb thing to do. We are fortunate enough to know very sharp people who are betting like 200K on minus 155 baseball lines. That's how you bet, by the way. They aren't looking to move the market on plus 250 and getting maxed out at $50. They do not care at all. So the casual bettor, I'm guessing, doesn't care about minus 160. They want the long shot still. And I will say, even though I'm quite certain it's Trayvon Walker, if you want the long shot, don't buy the dip on Aiden Hudson. You buy the dip on Icky, because that would be the second place they go. Again, I think I got him in February at 100 to 1. You're not fortunate enough to get him at that number anymore, but I still think that is the much greater chance that happens than Aiden Hutchinson. So I do rank them Walker, Icky, Hutchinson in that order at number one overall.
I agree with you. And I missed that 100 to 1, and I was not happy about it, but I got some free play in on 24 to 1. So
it was February 14. I don't even feel good.
It was a long time ago.
It's one of those stupid long shots. You think, I don't know who any of these players are. I haven't looked at them at all, but maybe. And so I don't feel bad about the number, but I do feel bad about the outright selection.
And I love what you said just in terms of the draft process of when you're betting drafts. I think, speaking about casual bettors, they bet on players that they like or think are good, or like, oh, this guy's going to be good. But none of that matters, because like you said, we're betting on what are the decision makers going to decide to do with these picks, not if somebody's going to be good. I like this guy's going to be good, he should go top 5, not 11 or 12. None of that matters. So we're trying to figure out what these NFL decision makers are going to do. And, when we're thinking about that, I think that, a lot of people have done really well with these exactas, top 3, top 5, whatever, the last few years, because we've known so much more. And now we don't know that much. So I guess I'll ask you, what else do you think we know about the top 5? We can just kind of go pick by pick and talk about it for a minute. Number 2, now Aiden Hutchinson on DraftKings Sportsbook is the minus 130 favorite. People thinking Walker goes number 1. The Lions, a guy they thought maybe they couldn't get, now get a local product who's still a very good prospect that'll go in the top 3-4 of this draft. Is that the guy that you think goes to 2? Or, Thibodeau has been a guy that the Lions have been, we've seen getting hyped up at 2. Is that still their guy? And now Hutchinson, who we were laying like minus 300 at one point to be the number 1 pick, starts to slide down the board.
I don't believe the Thibodeau steam at all. I tend to ignore most rumors that happen in the last week or so of the draft. I don't think they matter whatsoever. And so I'm not buying Kayvon Thibodeau steam at number 2. I still think the best way to bet this is Aiden Hutchinson over 1.5. I did sprinkle as well at number 2 overall, because I'm not really considering anyone else there besides him, assuming Walker's number 1. But honestly, like, if you want to play it that route, over 1.5 is the much safer direction, just in case
Covers
the
so many
Thibodeau
more bases.
Yeah, just in case Thibodeau number 2 is real. I don't believe that, though. Not only just being the hometown kid, but also the fact that we know Dan Campbell's personality and the fact that Hutchinson is usually touted for, one, his quote unquote crazy work ethic in the run game. That matters to Dan Campbell, as well as the fact that it was Thibodeau who initially at Indy's combine had 27 bench reps, led his position. And that's because Hutchinson didn't lift in Indy. Hutchinson then goes to Michigan's pro day. And while there's some questions regarding how much the setter's hands were on the bench bar, seems to be helping about a little bit.
You can always look a little bit better at your own school's pro day than going to another combine.
It's heavily favored in your regards, which is why I don't understand why anyone does anything in Indy. Wait till your pro day because you're going to get the help from everyone. But Hutchinson's did have one more rep, 28 bench reps, leading all edges in this class. I think strength also matters to Dan Campbell. So I truly believe there's something wrong in the universe if Campbell doesn't pick the guy who fits his personality perfectly in Hutchinson. Tibbs would be the only other option. But again, I'm not actually weighing that too heavily.
Yeah. And like throughout this process here, there's so many moving numbers. Tibbs is the worst draft bet that I have. I wrote an article on him on the DK playbook, taking the over on 5.5. And now he's down to a heavily juiced under on the 4.5. And, you know, stuff like that's going to happen. You're going to have a couple misses when you're getting in early in this process, but more often than not, you're going to get, you know, one that we talked about a lot on Thursday, the Kyle Hamilton over 6.5 at plus money. And now he's 10.5, 11.5. Are the type of things that you're looking to get.
So I actually love that Thibodeau is the one being steamed the most as we get close to the draft, because he's the one that's easier to spot the lie. Like you go back 2 months and he was a player everyone was saying was going to dip for his personality. And by the way, I don't even agree with that sentiment. I believe that NFL decision makers and GMs are a bunch of idiots. And so the fact they say Thibodeau is not dedicated to on the field because they are hard-headed football guys who don't understand that Thibodeau is just of the generation that is intelligent, right? One of the things they actually cite were his off-field concentration. Like he's obsessed with other things. Like when they said Kadarius Toney was more obsessed with being a rapper, and that could be true. But with Thibodeau, one of those off-field things is creating a charter school in his hometown in South LA. Like they are worried that is where his focus is at instead of his NFL career. And so even in seeing people like Aaron Donald, Sean McVay walk away, threaten to walk away at the peak of their powers because they understand they can't do this forever. They get their hundreds of millions or tens of millions and get the hell out of the game. Like that's what Thibodeau is very clearly going to do, but that doesn't deter from his focus on the field. Having said that, NFL coaches hate the fact he loves other things than football and will talk about them intelligently. So I still believe, as we knew 2 months ago, he's going to dip in the process. And whenever McShay, Kuiper, whoever it is on the broadcast says, wow, I can't believe Thibodeau fell this far. It's like, I can't. We knew the whole time Thibodeau was going to fall. So that's where I'm at with all my bets.
All right. Interesting. And an interesting spot in this draft becomes the Texans with number 3, because I think a lot of people maybe assume that they take the third edge rusher that's left over from the Jags and the Lions potentially. But there's also some, maybe they do have their quarterback in Davis Mills. There's also a couple of good offensive linemen potentially there. And even if Icky goes high, you can get a guy like Evan Neal, super polished from Alabama. Or there's the cornerback talk. Couple good corners at the top. I think Sauce Gardner is a guy that everybody thinks is the best. But now you're getting guys like McShay saying that Derek Stingley's name is being thrown around there, a guy that's really rising in this draft process. What say you, John, on Houston at number 3?
I'm also the belief they're in on cornerback here.
Okay.
Now, whether that cornerback be Sauce Gardner or Derek Stingley, as you mentioned, not sure. Don't know.
One thing, real quick, I want to throw this in there. Another question, I guess. Do you think that the Stingley smoke at number 3 is coming out of Houston because they actually want Gardner, who's considered the best corner in the draft, and they're trying not to get leaped. They're trying not to get leaped for a corner. Trading up in this draft. Nobody wants to trade up in this draft.
This is the great question we were all trying to answer right now because it's going to matter for your exactas.
Yes.
And I'm only interested genuinely in 2 exactas. I like to put my research in, make a precise plan, weed out all the information that doesn't matter, which is genuinely 98% of what we take in as humans, and then go from there. And I have 2 exactas, and one of them start with the first 2 picks I mentioned, and either I'm flopping the cornerbacks in that exacta between Derek Stingley and Gardner because I don't know. We know for certain one team in the NFL has Stingley over Gardner. It could be others. We know for certain, though, it's one. And really the only 2 teams that are linked to potentially having that approach are the Texans and the Seahawks. And so I keep coming back to the idea that the Texans have instituted culture so much of a performance. They have no idea what it is in a good football player, how to build a good team. They believe their culture is correct. And with their culture, it always comes back to character. And so if performance doesn't matter, I think Stingley and Gardner both, by the way, are amazing plays. They're going to get lucky and hit on and get one of them. But honestly, like even if like George Karlaftis, if their cornerback wasn't available here, they love Karlaftis' character so much. I could see him going at number 3 overall. Fortunately, he's going to be at number 13 for them. But I believe as of right now, I'm going to have Stingley in that spot because, again, they don't care about Gardner or Stingley. They don't think one is better than the other. They are looking only at character. And so that's where I lean right now. But if it was Gardner, that would not shock me either. All you got to do is look back to everyone cites Lovie Smith's tenure with the Bears and that they never drafted a cornerback because of his scheme. All you have to do is look back at his media conference a couple of weeks ago. He was asked specifically about the cornerbacks room, and he legitimately said it needs improvement. Literally just came out and said, these guys suck. We need help here. And so it's going to be a cornerback in my mind. I have Stingley right now. If it was Gardner, not shocking.
Interesting. Okay. So set on corner there at 3.
And also I'm aware of the DraftKings like trifectas, and everywhere you get trifectas, everyone will look at these long shots and perhaps say, yeah, but it's such a long bet. Like, how are you so certain? But remember, these numbers exist for us to bet them. Like, I guarantee you, no offense to DraftKings, I love you, DraftKings. But other than that, we know these books are like waiting on news to catch up when we are the ones that are ahead on news. And so I believe we are ahead on cornerback at number 3. And that's why I like the trifecta to start with.
I like the cornerback at 3 call. And that means that a edge is going to be slipping a little bit, potentially. And obviously we both kind of agree that it probably is going to be Tibbs. Does he slip past 4 at the Jets? The Jets, this is where the draft gets interesting as well, because we have these top 3 picks, and then 4-5 is Jets Giants, both of whom have 2 top 10 picks. So they have such high picks to address these needs. We can lump them together. Like, what do you think the Jets and Giants are thinking at 4-5? Keeping in mind that they're very quickly going to be turning around and taking another huge need.
As it stands, my exactest bets stop at 5 because I do have confidence in the number 4 pick. I have no confidence in number 5 since what I believe is going to happen is the Jets are going to take Ike Ekwonu. This past 2 years has been focused solely on making life easier for Zach Wilson and making his 5-year contract easier for the Jets. Doesn't matter whether we believe or whether they believe Zach Wilson's a good player or not. It's the fact that they're already all in and they have a quarterback for cheap for the next 5 years. That's what's important. So make life easy for those 4 to 5 years. You know, you get that option in the first round and then go from there. And so that's all they've been doing. We also had Dane Brugler. It always helps when intelligent people then match by priors. And Dane Brugler on Monday morning mentioned on his podcast that there are a lot of people around the league believe Mekhi Becton won't play another down for the Jets ever again. Remember, Mekhi Becton injured, did not rehab according to what the team suggested, was out of shape all year, basically didn't play, was then outplayed by George Fant at left tackle. And then, although it is technically voluntary, it wasn't necessarily voluntary, the offseason workouts for Becton, and yet he didn't show. Joe Douglas is very clearly tired of all of it. And so I do believe they get their replacement, either left tackle or right tackle Nicky at this spot, knowing that George Fant, although he really did play amazing, it's going to be up to him to perform well again and earn a long-term deal. They'll probably let him go through this year and then know that if he plays great, wonderful. You got a left tackle for the next 3 or 4 years whenever you extend him, and then you have Icky at right tackle. Otherwise, you have your replacement at left tackle if you allow Fant to walk because he commands too much on the market. And so that's the plan right now. Thibodeau, he's being mentioned, But people that are hearing the news aren't listening. They're hearing it. They're not listening. The Jets are intrigued by Thibodeau. They are interested in Icky, which tells you they are certain they want to draft Icky, but maybe they can convince themselves to go Thibodeau. It's going to take a lot of convincing, though. So I'm still of the belief it is very certain Icky here. I have more confidence in this than I do number 3, honestly.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So, well, let's say that for some reason we see an early curveball and Icky goes 1 or 3. Do you think the plan is still to address the offensive line first and go with somebody like Neal then at 4 if you're the Jets? Or do you see them? I assume the other need that you're going to say we see at 10 would then become a wide receiver, especially with your theory that help Zach Wilson. What better way to help Zach Wilson than get 2 top 10 picks, an offensive lineman and a wide receiver? That seems extremely ideal for that situation. So is that 2-part question, I guess? Do the Jets still go even if Icky is gone with an offensive lineman there? And is a wide receiver at 10 the obvious follow-up?
I believe since they are only mentioning Thibodeau at number 4 behind Icky, they would just take the fallback option and grab the edge rusher, because edge rusher is a need as well. We do know, though, people are still pinning Gardner there or whomever the cornerback is that falls. We do know they're not going to take a cornerback. Like, the Salah defense does not prioritize cornerbacks whatsoever. He believes his scheme can fit any particular player there. They rotate corners. And so they don't need a shutdown option in the slightest. That's an afterthought. And so I just think they stick with one of the 2 options. Icky, the main priority, and then the fallback being Thibodeau. And then, yes, unless like an Evan Neal falls, look to wide receiver at number 10. 5, as you mentioned, is interesting because so the Giants knowingly trialed out Charles Cross at right tackle. And if you look at all the offensive linemen they signed this offseason, it is all guys who move very well, because to help out Daniel Jones in the short game. Also, the short game alleviates pass pressure. And as they're trying to improve an offensive line, that's what's going to help Daniel Jones the most. And so not only do they try out Charles Cross, who is the much more athletic prospect, better to scramble out than Evan Neal, they also, Daigle mentioned Cross specifically in his presser, citing that they would be open to moving Andrew Thomas to right tackle if the right player fell. The question, though, isn't if they believe Charles Cross is the right player, because they do believe that. The question is, when they get to number 5 and Gardner or Stingley is there, knowing they aren't going to have James Bradbury on the roster in week 1, knowing they have other expiring deals at cornerback ahead of 2023, the question is, do they believe they can let one of them fall to 7 and get them, or do they love Cross so much they're going to take him over Neal? And so that's the question I can't answer. It's really just only 3 answers there: Cross, Neal, or Stingley, or Gardner. Right. But I don't know. And then honestly, it becomes at number 6, the Panthers would definitely take Cross, right? I'm a belief of that. However, the team trading up could also take Cross. And so if they let Cross fall, they then go Neal or the cornerback at 7. And that's the 5, 6, 7 is where I get lost completely.
Yeah, that's an interesting part of the draft, because we know what the Giants want to do, I feel like. But the question becomes, what can they get away with at 5 to leave themselves at 7 with a team that has a similar need in between there at 6? So I guess the question becomes, do you believe that they like Cross enough that if Neal and Cross were both there, take the corner, because you're guaranteed one lineman's going to fall to 7, I guess? Which one do you think they prioritize more? Cross is the guy, or it doesn't really matter, give us the corner and the lineman so we get out with both of our needs?
I believe Cross is the guy. I
Really?
think they will tell them. I think they will tell themselves, one, they like Cross much more over Neal, but also that they assume no one is trading up to 6 for a cornerback. People are trading up for one of the leftover linemen and Cross or Neal. I think they get their guy, and then Stingley or Gardner fall to 7, and that's where the cutoff is. That's also why Gardner's number under 7.5 is like the best possible number to bet that's going to get ruined immediately when we get off the show, because there's no way he has 4 outs under 7. There's no way he gets past 7 at all. And so the number should be 5.5, honestly.
So this is Cross that we're talking about right now.
Well, this is the Gardner number that should be 5.5. It's actually 7.5. That's a bad number. But I believe
Gardner
they
number.
do.
Sorry, I thought you said Gardner number. But
yeah, because I think Gardner falls to 7, and that's why 7.5 over under is a bad number, because like of course he's going to go under 7. Of course he will. He's not getting past that. And so it should be 5.5 to make better sweat whether the Giants take him with their first pick, because the second pick isn't actually a question mark at all. And so, yes, I do think they prioritize Cross, the proven tackle, over an interior player like Neal at number 5. But again, if they take a cornerback, wouldn't be shocking at all.
So it seems like with Cross still sitting here with the 7.5 number and the Giants having 2 picks under there and the Panthers, that Cross under 7.5 is about as strong of a play that could be left on the board for a draft like this in your mind?
That is a very solid bet. Yes.
Okay. All right. So we've kind of been chopping it up position by position and really covered essentially 8 of the top 10 picks. We don't need to go to like 8 and 9. What do the Falcons and Seahawks do specifically? Because now we're getting to too many outcomes that we're guessing on that we're already too far down the draft board. But for us to finish up, I do want to go to some just draft positions on DraftKings Sportsbook and talk a few over-unders before we go. And I want to start with the quarterback position, because we've seen quarterbacks just flying off the boards in these really talented and highly sought after draft classes these last couple of years. And now it's the complete opposite. Basically a lot of people have said, the 5 quarterbacks that went in the top 15 last year would all go before, one quarterback in this draft went off the board, which I think all of us agree with. So scrolling down the board real quick, they're juiced, but like a -145 on Kenny Pickett to go over 12.5 is sitting there. Let's see. Malik Willis is a -130 for over 10.5. Matt Corral is sitting there. Basically, will he be a first rounder or not? Almost over under 33.5 on DraftKings Sportsbook. And let's see, has Ritter moved around much at all? I think he might have gone up from 28.5 to 30 on DraftKings. Is he even here?
While you look for it, with Pickett and Willis, I would gladly take Pickett over still. I think the earliest he goes is 19 to the Saints ahead of the Steelers. Willis, the only curveball is 6. If the Panthers are linked to a quarterback, they are linked to a traits quarterback, and Pickett doesn't have those traits. Ben McAdoo would very much be a Willis individual over Pickett. And because remember, McAdoo, like as much as we make fun of him, I swear to you, people are going to laugh at me now. I swear to you, he is a bright football mind. He wanted to move up Patrick Mahomes. John Morris said no. He wanted to move up for Josh Allen. John Morris said no, because of course Eli Manning was there, and the Giants prefer silver spoons and handshakes to actually good football in that regime anyways. And so also the fact that McAdoo led the league in 11 personnel before it was popular, before it was known. Sean McVay then came and was a smarter play caller, led the league in 11 personnel. Everyone freaked out, thought it was such a very big deal. McAdoo was there first. And so Malik Willis is the type of quarterback. If he has a say in the room, I bet that's a pick. But I still believe it's going to be tackle over all else, because Tepper will have the final say. So Willis over, I'm not as confident in, because there is an out there. Pickett, there is no out under 12.
Okay, so we'll say that Pickett over 12.5, the better bet there, and you're paying the juice for it. It's -145. I'll say I've bet some Willis over 10.5, and I got it when it was plus 105. So like,
it's a good bet still, honestly. Like I said, one team, literally just one team. No one's trading up for Willis. One team would have to go through a curveball.
So you don't see. So Willis doesn't. No chance. Willis goes 9 to the Seahawks or 8 to the Falcons, both of whom need a quarterback, but I have tons of other needs with much better players on the board, it seems like.
I think the Seahawks have Ritter over Willis. That's the real curveball. That's why Ritter, like I sprinkled on him, number 1 quarterback, first quarterback taken in the draft, because I think Ritter is higher on his board from, like, if you read Michael Dugar of the Athletics and others. Yeah. And also, by the way, we all know we're not going to get the top 10 right, because the Seahawks are absolutely throwing a curveball. Like Nakobe Dean, the linebacker, his over-under dropped at DraftKings like 29.5, 30.5. And like the Seahawks could take up at 9. They don't care at all about good football players. They're going to build on their foundation. And so like whoever they pick, it's going to screw up mock drafts. We know that for certain.
All right. This just seems like one of those drafts where the first quarterback, whoever it is going to go pretty late. Late teens, could be 20.
And I wouldn't be shocked by any of it, honestly. Even if it's like Hal at 32, the Lions are supposedly looking at Hal on day 2. They, of course, pick at 34, I believe.
They got they got the late day 1 pick and followed up with the early day 2 pick.
But if it gets to 32, you get the 5th-year option in the first round. So why wouldn't they just pull the trigger there instead of waiting until day 2, especially if like the safeties who they're also reportedly high on, Lewis Seen, Dax Hill, especially if those guys get taken somehow before them, of course they would take Hal. So that's kind of what I'm looking at right now. Yeah, the quarterback market it's going to be wild, and whether they all fall or all get taken, nothing should shock us.
Interesting. All right, let's look at a couple other guys here. Here's a guy that we've like given out along the way, and I admitted on the Thursday podcast, I have Kyle Hamilton over 6.5 at plus money, some over 8.5. He's now at 10.5 with a minus 175 to the over. So like, I'm not saying you need to go out and bet this, but do you think there's any chance he goes to anyone before Washington at 11?
We're talking about Kyle Hamilton, correct?
Kyle Hamilton, Notre Dame safety.
The Falcons would be the only one, but also...
And if the Falcons, with the needs that they have, use a top 10 pick on a safety, that would be something.
Well, remember, it's not the same regime, but they also drafted AJ Terrell, and AJ Terrell is an awesome. He's a shutdown corner, but think how bad their defense has been around him. It doesn't matter at all that they drafted AJ Terrell. They passed on CeeDee Lamb for AJ Terrell, and literally Terrell has arguably been a better player than Lamb at their respective positions, and it hasn't mattered, has not impacted the defense whatsoever. And so we know Dean Peace is very high on versatile safeties. That's what Kyle Hamilton brings to the table. Having said that, I still believe they're going to be on wide receiver, or if a player, I think they're planning on taking these positions because they don't expect someone they have higher on their board to fall. That's why I think Thibodeau is really interesting, because he could easily fall to 8. And then they're like, they look around and ask, how did this happen? It's like, well, because no one else wanted him. That's why they're concerned. Whereas you should not be concerned for a team that needs everything, especially if you can get premier pass production for at least 4 years, 5 years too. So I think they go Thibodeau, but beyond that, Drake London an option. I don't have Kyle Hamilton really as a threat.
Okay. And let's wrap, I guess, on the over-unders with this. You mentioned the wide receiver position. Atlanta's obviously a potential suitor. There are a lot of teams that need wide receivers in this draft. There are a lot of good wide receivers in this draft. It seems maybe one of the stronger positions in this draft. And then there's the argument also when you see like an MVS contract this offseason, that getting these good wide receivers on these rookie contracts is a big deal. What is your thoughts on the wide receiver position here? Some of the guys on the board, pretty much everybody getting bet down. You know, any value on some of those over-unders that you still like? Any strong takeaways on the wide receiver position overall, I guess?
The first wide receiver starts at number 5. That's where we're monitoring, because it could be Giants, knowing they're trying to trade Kadarius Toney. Although, as we talked about, unexpected be, Giants could also are rumored to be trying to trade one of their first 2 picks for more draft capital, since they had to cut everyone from the Judge and Gettleman era and just had to start a whole new team, obviously, because it's Judge and Gettleman. And so I think we look at the Saints to potentially trade up to number 5, knowing Joe Schoen's ties with the Saints organization. I think a deal can be done there, but the Saints are so high on Chris Olave, and that's why Chris Olave's number at 16.5, I still believe it's at DraftKings, is very good despite the juice, because there is no chance in hell Olave gets past 16. The Saints have him over other players like Garrett Wilson as well. Like, they love Olave. His speed does not get past them. So 16.5, still a safe bet. Drake London, likely 8, 10, or floor at 11. So we're not worried about that either. Jameson Williams, we still expect to be a top 10, also a player teams could trade into the top 10 for. Either way, in my opinion, does not get past the Vikings at 12, knowing it's a new regime. They could easily look to expand their 3 wide receiver set. And also, remember, they restructured Adam Thielen's deal, so it's basically only good for 1 more year. And then they will probably look to void the deal and then find a replacement. That could be as early as 12 this year. So that's where we start with wide receivers. And then from then, it's a major question mark. We could see Treylon Burks to the Eagles with their 2nd pick. We could see beyond Olave and Burks, Pickens, the one I have removed from the first round, because once Bob McGann sent out his piece interviewing execs and coaches, seems like he's the one coaches That's the biggest discrepancy between actual football minds and then us on Twitter, is that coaches hate George Pickens. They just think he's either boom or bust. And when you're talking boom or bust in the first round, it's not worth taking on that risk. So he drops out. We then move in Dotson. We move in a player like Christian Watson as well. Although, despite what we think about Christian Watson, just because he played 52 career games, all against FCS competition, has not played anyone, and is still, despite that, had a 13% drop rate. The fact he's fast and big, that's all the Chiefs care about, which is why he keeps sneaking into the back end of the first round. And so I think we have the names pretty much sorted out, especially once we remove Pickens from that mix. But which order they go in, complete toss up. Who the hell knows? And so that's why I get less certain whenever we're discussing where they go from 19 on.
Right. I think the two most interesting there, Jameson Williams for starters, who's maybe the biggest riser, and it was the ACL, but he's doing fine. So now we're seeing that steam come in on him and that number get lower and lower and lower. I think we're going to wind up seeing him go in the top 10 somewhere. Personally,
10 and 11 are going to be huge, because I believe the Falcons and Washington both have Drake London over Garrett Wilson. And then we also know Jameson Williams mixes in as the exact type of player the Jets want. And so like 8, 10, 11, whether Thibodeau's there or not, are going to decide a whole lot for the rest of the teams beyond that.
Okay. And then Pickens real quick, that his number tells you everything. I feel like that 36.5, I think, is the last I looked at it. It just like they don't want to use that first round pick on him, but then the number's right there because he looks like an early second round, an early day 2 guy because of the talent. All right. So we will get you out of here on this. I did it to Will and Connor on Thursday. Mm-hmm. I just said at this stage, and I'll say it is 1:42 p.m. Eastern time on Monday, April 25th. If you had to give out your favorite bet that is still on the board for the NFL draft, what would you say that is, John?
No one's coming here for Aiden Hutchinson plus 110 over 1.5. They don't care. They want to pretend like they retire off one bet. And so I will tell you, like I already said, I personally am putting my money into the exacta of Trayvon Walker, Aiden Hutchinson, Derek Stingley, and Ike Ekwonu. And that's where I stand.
Boom. All right. Coming in swinging for the fences, giving out a grand slam as the best bet. And
if it doesn't go in that 4, I'm going to be looking for another job, because I'll be living under a bridge and can't record from anywhere.
All right, there it is. John Daigle coming on, giving his best bet from 4for4 football and Bet Spurts. Has an Emmy, but doesn't physically have it. Thank you very much, John, for coming on Unreasonable Odds and spewing some draft knowledge for us. And of course, good luck on Thursday night and through the rest of the weekend, because the bets go through the rest of the weekend a lot of the time too.
And keep up the great work, Julian. Love your content.
All right. Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate you.